How's it going? Welcome back, my wise ones, to another great video today as we take a look at Fallout New Vegas and the Fallout TV show. Now, I don't usually talk about shows on my channel, mostly, gaming stuff, but as this is related, I just wanted to kind of discuss something that's been on my mind recently, and that is basically how the Fallout TV show second season is kind of destroying New Vegas in some ways. Now, to preface, I just want to say I actually enjoyed the Fallout TV show quite a lot. In fact, I was, waiting in anticipation for the second season because I really did think the first season was great, and the second season is good as a TV show, but I feel like what it's doing to the Fallout IP is very similar to what the Bethesda games of Fallout have also done to the Fallout franchise, which is basically undermine it and basically make it a bit of a joke in some areas. I think it's unrealistic to expect it to follow absolutely everything that the previous games actually did, but there are some things in the show that have just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, and just how it's treating the original source material. And it just feels at times that it is kind of, Bethesda putting their noses in and asking for things to be kind of changed around. So I'm gonna just discuss that today because I do think that Fallout New Vegas should have got a bit more respect. And as an actual TV show, it seems that the second season, compared to the first season, which did so many things right because it was original, it had its own storyline, it was doing its own thing, this seems to be very much that of, kind of that theme park attraction ride that I talked about before in my Bethesda videos, where it's kind of just showcasing the big things that make Fallout popular without truly understanding the deeper thematics as to what made the original Fallout game so good and that of New Vegas, and it's kind of treating it almost as a circus in some regards. So that's just what I wanted to discuss today.
What in the goddamn?
So welcome back, and I do hope you enjoy this video. If you are new here, consider subscribing. If you love game reviews, game analysis, and philosophical videos, you're in the right place. Become a wise one today. Think for yourself, critical think, and analyze everything in autistic detail. That's what we do here.
That's how you communicate, isn't it? By citing example. By metaphor. Ozani's army with fist open. Sukat! His eyes uncovered!
And consider giving the video a like, as that does help the YouTube algorithm gods actually show this video to more people, and that would really help a lot as it is a constant fight against the algorithm, so I would appreciate that. So if you're new here, you probably don't know how much of a die-hard Fallout fan I am. If you are already a wise one and watch my previous stuff, you'll know how much I love Fallout, how much I talk about these games, how much I mod them, and yeah, I'm just a big, passionate fan of the Fallout franchise, and I don't usually go into, following franchises, but Fallout to me was always something quite special, and in a way it's bittersweet to see it kind of go mainstream, and you can't expect something that was kind of more niche and then go mainstream not to be a little bit diluted. And in no way I'm saying that we need to gatekeep it or anything like that. I think that's a pretty stupid mentality, but I do feel that the second season of the Fallout TV show is killing New Vegas, literally, and also just diluting some of the themes like the Bethesda games have diluted the Fallout franchise over the years, especially 76 making it a live service kind of cosmetic slop fest compared to the deep, darker thematics of Fallout and what it used to be. Do check out my previous videos on how Bethesda doesn't understand Fallout and stuff like that if you're interested, but needless to say, I do think that Fallout used to be much more about the philosophical ideologies of each faction, the dark nature of humanity, and how, no matter what we do, we're gonna cause, warfare and just horrible stuff between each other because that's kind of human nature and there's no escaping that. whereas now they're kind of painting it as almost a byproduct of just greedy corporations. And that's always been a part of the Fallout universe.
Nothing to impede progress. If you want to see the fate of democracies, look out the windows.
Vault-Tec, Robco, and all of these different companies, of course, they did crazy experiments and all this kind of stuff that you learn about in the games, but they're kind of leaning into the fact that this is all just Vault-Tec and, kind of a product of greedy corporations, and that's, very boring. So many sci-fi shows and movies and games do exactly the same trope. Fallout always stood apart from that, not because of its, retrofuturism, but because of its themes. And the retrofuturism is, of course, just a, byproduct of the timeline kind of diverging from, our universe to the Fallout universe. Bethesda is so fixated on that theme that they make it all about that, and that's why the later games get more colorful, more cheerful, and much more 50s aesthetic orientated compared to what the original thematics of Fallout was. Now, I don't want to be just one of those Fallout autists just rambling off, so let me get to some more, concrete points that I want to make. Now, like I said, I don't think that we need to gatekeep Fallout, and it's okay for the games to change over time. Obviously, I prefer the older games. I don't really like the newer stuff. But my main point is the Fallout TV show, and especially the second season of the Fallout TV show, is killing New Vegas and has basically destroyed New Vegas. So basically what they're doing is they've basically chosen an ending of the game, and I'm kind of glad that they did that, because leaving it up to just speculation would be kind of cowardly, and also it wouldn't really make sense because you would have to avoid everything, especially if you're going to New Vegas. So they have chosen an ending. It looks like it is the house ending, but they have changed quite a few things around with how the factions work. So what I've noticed a lot in this second season is the humor. The humor has been very off, and that's something I didn't really notice in the first season of the TV show. They like to do these kind of stupid jokes with the factions, especially with the Brotherhood of Steel, them being completely moronic and acting like kind of children and idiots, which doesn't make much sense considering their power and influence that is now being shown in the TV show. It doesn't really make sense for them to all be acting like, complete idiots and man-children that are just kind of throwing, grenades at each other, playing around with weapons, and just destroying everything. They've also changed a lot of the factions' ideologies from, the Brotherhood of Steel kind of supposed to be looking and securing technology, but now it's more about, protecting and cleansing the wasteland, which I know is different chapters, but they just seem to be kind of meddling a lot with established lore, and it just makes some of the factions seem like a joke. I also don't really like how they handle the NCR, and I talked about this before in my previous videos about how Bethesda doesn't really understand Fallout. And that is, the NCR are a massive faction, if you can even call them that at this point. They are basically a civilization left in the wasteland, but the point is, Bethesda doesn't really like the Fallout universe progressing. They don't like the idea of civilization coming back. They want everything to be at this ground zero apocalypse, where everyone is just still struggling and surviving, which doesn't make much sense. And even though they do allude that, other NCR members are still out there, they're kind of also saying that they've all been destroyed because of Shady Sands, which doesn't make much sense. And it's the same thing with the Legion as well in the show. They seem to be making them out to be more of a joke instead of this faction that is very scary and brutal, doing, all of these atrocious acts of violence and stuff like that in the name of their ideology. Now, I've seen many theories saying that, Todd Howard himself is just salty over New Vegas and it being the most popular Fallout game, and he's trying to destroy that game and all the lore that has been set up. I think that's a bit of an overreach, a bit of a, cope, to be honest. And some fans are just taking it a bit too far, if I'm honest. I don't necessarily think that's what's going on. I think it's more about Bethesda securing their IP, but it's hard not to feel that when the show itself is now focusing on all of these places in New Vegas, but they're all destroyed. And it's okay to do that, but what I have a problem with is how they're doing it. Whereas within the first season, like I said, it had an original storyline, it was, going somewhere interesting. Now in the second season, it seems to be kind of just showcasing New Vegas. And for a lot of people who haven't played the games, it just seems to be a little bit random, instead of actually following the proper story that should be followed. It's kind of just, showcasing these areas of New Vegas that players will remember, and instead of adding lore, it's all just destruction. Kind of like how Bethesda shapes the Fallout gameplay in their recent games, where it's just go there, shoot something, situation solved. Instead of adding new interesting lore, they're just basically showing locations and them being destroyed with nothing else to replace. But the biggest thing that is kind of rubbing me the wrong way with this second season is, like I said, the humor, how they're treating the jokes in the second season, because Fallout humor was always very dark, and when I say dark, I mean, bleak, in the original games. But now it's kind of much more of that mainstream MCU type humor, where it's just kind of making fun of, the established universe itself, as to kind of not upset anyone with, kind of more darker jokes or something like that. And I think the writing in the second season has also taken a bit of a hit. There's some good stuff in here, like the ghoul talking about the ship of Theseus and all of this kind of stuff, and making reference to the games and stuff like that. But there just seems to be a lot more wink wink nod nod moments. Now I always come back to that analogy of modern Fallout feeling like a roller coaster ride, a theme park ride, because that's kind of what Bethesda does. They kind of highlight, the surface level stuff of Fallout that makes it so iconic, and they think that is Fallout, and that is now what Fallout is, instead of it being the kind of deeper stuff underneath, which the previous older games touched on a lot. Like I said, the ideologies and the philosophies of these different factions and stuff like that, and the new world that it was creating. Bethesda just seems to kind of hit the reset button on everything, and I just don't like how everyone seems to act very, very stupid in this second season. It doesn't really make anyone feel threatening or dangerous or as real as the games, when they're all acting like a bunch of idiots. And it's fair enough for some characters to act like idiots, like Maximus and stuff like that, but it seems like a lot of these characters are just supposed to be not taken seriously, which doesn't make much sense considering how serious the previous games were, how well thought out, New Vegas was, especially with its factions like the NCR and, everything else. It just seems like they kind of want to destroy everything and leave nothing in its place, and that's the most scary thing. I hope that's not the case, but just the way they reference the NCR and how they've been destroyed, a lot of the callbacks, patrolling the Mojave makes you wish for a nuclear winter, like, it just feels a little bit, over the top in some areas. I'm not saying it's all bad, but there's just there's a lot of stuff that's concerning me as a Fallout fan. So I just wanted to talk about that today, because I do think that the Fallout second season is killing New Vegas in some areas. It just makes me a little bit concerned going forward, when we finally do get a Fallout 5, if that ever happens, what has happened to the Fallout universe, basically. What's happened with these established factions, which weren't just in New Vegas, they were big powerhouses in the Fallout universe, and it just seems like they're all being eradicated just for the sake of kind of spectacle. That's kind of the problem I have with it, and some of the writing, the jokes. I do enjoy, the references to the games and stuff like that, but there's a point where you do it too much. So I just wanted to discuss that today. Let me know what your thoughts are on the second season, if you're enjoying it so far, or if you're a little bit concerned like me. Like I said, it's not all bad, but I do think there are some things that need to be discussed. And this isn't a hate video on the show or anything like that, just some stuff that I've noticed, as I did actually enjoy the first season of the show. So let me know what you think. Has the second season of the Fallout TV show killed New Vegas, or are people overreacting? I do think that, you know, there are some aspects that are kind of undeniable, but hopefully in the end the show will you know, reveal that the main story is being continued, followed along, and that, you know, it's just certain groups of these factions that are kind of acting a bit stupid and stuff like that. Only time will tell. Let me know what you think, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day, and peace out.